In the opulent penthouse overlooking Puget Sound, Isabella Vega stood perfectly still. Her gaze was as cold and sharp as a blade. 7 months pregnant, her heart felt unbearably heavy with betrayal. A message had just arrived, accompanied by a photograph of her husband tech billionaire, Victor Salazar, embracing another woman in a downtown bar. The storm raging outside was nothing compared to the inferno of fury burning within her. This is the story of a woman who, from the heights of love and prestige, fell into the darkness of deceit, yet found the light to move forward, stronger than ever. All right. Before you settle in, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely vibing with what I'm putting out here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. Isabella squatted by the high-rise window, her finger gliding lightly across the phone screen until the photograph appeared in sharp detail. Victor, his smile radiant as sunlight, standing beside Chloe Winters, the woman with hair as fiery as flame, her gaze keen, and her smile utterly captivating. That image ignited in Isabella's mind like a torch, incinerating every last hope she had left. She clenched her hand so tightly that her fingernails dug into her palm. Perhaps blood would well if she did not stop, but she remained silent. Tears? They had long since dried up after every previous encounter with doubt, when she had wept like a sudden summer storm at night, only to see her tears evaporate as quickly as they fell. "I won't cry anymore," Isabella whispered, her voice brimming with resolve, as she caressed the grief that threatened to pull her under. She pressed her lips together, thinking of the tiny life growing inside her, the faint heartbeat fluttering within her pure and untouched by pain. "We deserve happiness," she murmured, her trembling hand resting against her belly. A warmth spread through her, as though a quiet electric current had surged from her heart into her unborn child, imparting strength. But happiness is not easily found amid a tangle of suspicion and deceit. Isabella recalled the promises once made, the evenings they had warmed one another beneath the city lights, breathless as they spun dreams of their future. A cozy apartment, their names engraved on a single key, the laughter of children echoing in a sunlit living room. Now all of that felt like a mirage, shattered by one tearing photograph. Chloe Winters, with her flaming hair and star-quality poise, was not the first woman to intrude upon Victor's life, yet the pain this time burned hotter than ever before. This Chloe was no innocent bystander. She was the thief who had stolen every shred of love and trust. The steady patter of rain against the glass window roused Isabella from her reverie. The city's lights shimmered like a constellation of artificial stars, reflected hazily on the pane, conjuring flickers of broken memories. She inhaled deeply, striving for calm. Each breath felt like a blade slicing into her wounds. Yet she knew she must remain strong, for 2 lives depended on her. Her own, and the one yet to be born. Isabella remembered the first time they met. Victor with his warm smile, eyes soft as if they could reach into her very soul. She had smiled shyly, and he had gifted her a sense of safety, a sensation she had never believed she deserved. Now that feeling lay in ruins alongside the image on her phone. On one side lurked sweet recollections. On the other, the stark evidence of betrayal. Rising to her feet, Isabella pulled back the heavy drape, allowing the city lights to flood the room like a fine blade slicing through gloom. She crossed to her vanity, retrieved a porcelain cup filled with pencils and crisp sheets of paper. She began to write a letter, not to anyone else, but to herself and the child growing inside her. "Darling, I promise to give you a life saturated with love, where laughter never comes at the price of betrayal. I believe we deserve to be happy, and I will never cease searching for that happiness." With a firm stroke, she completed the letter and placed it upon the desk, sealing it within the sanctuary of her own heart. That night, amid the glimmering lights of the city and the gentle patter of rain, she discovered the wellspring of her own strength, and the bond that united her with the 2 lives she carried, her own and her child's. The penthouse door creaked sharply as it swung open, revealing Victor drenched by the nighttime rain. His coat hung heavy to his knees, rivulets of water streaming down his shoulders, mingling with a heady, unfamiliar cologne, not the scent Isabella once knew. She stood to one side, back straight, her gaze as cold as ice, though beneath it all a smoldering fire of rage burned. Her dark, damp hair fell over her shoulders in glossy waves, each strand quivering as she drew in a slow, steady breath. "Working late?" Isabella's voice rang out, soft yet edged like a knife. Calm cruelty distilled into a single question. Victor froze in the threshold, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. He'd assumed that one apology, one half-hearted explanation, would soothe her wrath as it had before, but this time, Isabella was prepared. Without another word, she walked deliberately to the wooden table by the high-rise window. Gently, she brushed the thick stack of documents she had laid out, earlier white cover, boldly stamped, in formal black ink, divorce agreement. Her footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor, steady and resolute, like a tolling bell marking the end of one chapter. Victor followed, striving for composure, though each wet step betrayed his tension. His collar still soaked, droplets clinging to his bangs. When she halted, she didn't need the room's light to see his face. In that instant, she discerned his remorse and fear emotions that had already cost her so much pain. Without a word of defense, Isabella raised her hand and flung the documents directly at his chest. The papers landed with a rustle. The crisp new smell of printed pages filled the damp air. Victor stammered, searching for words, but his voice remained parched and empty. He raised an imploring brow and stuttered, "Isabella, I never meant..." His unfinished plea dissolved in the charged silence. Isabella curled a mocking smile, sorrow briefly flickering in her eyes before stealing over. "You never meant to?" She laughed softly, voice quivering with irony. "You never meant that I'd stay quiet? You never meant I'd accept your empty apologies?" She stepped closer, pressing a fingertip to the dossier cover as if engraving her decision in stone. "There's nothing more you could say to me." He fell silent, his eyes reddened, reflecting the city lights beyond the glass. The rain pattered relentlessly, like the drumbeat of a breaking heart. Isabella turned her gaze outside, then softened her tone just enough. "From now on, every step you take, every choice you make, will no longer touch my life or our child's." She placed a protective hand over her belly, affirming that no matter how deep her wounds, she carried an innocent life she would fiercely shield. Victor sank into mute sorrow, shame and grief consuming him. He wept in silence for losing her, but for realizing that the most precious thing he had would never be his again. Isabella turned away, her stride graceful yet decisive, leaving the door ajar behind her as the city's glow cast her silhouette across the empty room. That night, the rain continued its unending song. But in Isabella's heart, the song had changed. She and her child deserved love, respect, and a home free of deceit. Looking back, Isabella could still see with perfect clarity the image of the shy 18-year-old girl stepping off the rickety bus, the early morning mist shrouding the Arizona desert sky. The tiny town where she had grown up consisted only of red gravel roads and endless stretches of sand, where the sun burned each footstep, as if it were fuel for a raging fire. Every afternoon, she would stand by the window of her weathered wooden house, gaze fixed on the distant horizon, and wonder what might await her beyond that shimmering line. Her dream of escaping the small-town life grew with every page she borrowed from the old-school library, with every story she read of the vast world beyond the desert. The day she received the prestigious scholarship to Stanford, Isabella's heart had exploded in delirious joy. She whispered the university's name over and over as though it were a thing too wonderful to be true, because who could believe that she, a girl who had only ever dared to dream of touching that high, open sky, would now be walking the path of what people called the elite world? Her house erupted in celebration. Her hair whipped in the wind as she raced across the red sands, scattering years of buried longing, to redefine her fate. In her early days at Stanford, she often felt adrift among classmates from every corner of the globe. The bright faces in the laboratories, exchange students swapping languages over stale coffee, and the flutter of startup ideas drifting through every cafe conversation. More than once, Isabella wondered if she truly belonged, that she was worthy of sharing a lab bench, sitting at the same table, even speaking with the professors. Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, when the first maple leaves shifted from green to gold, she wandered into an artificial intelligence seminar and met Victor. Victor was unlike any young man she had ever encountered. He wore a pale blue shirt, held a stylus in his hand, and spoke fluidly of intricate algorithms, yet his eyes lit up with genuine surprise when she asked how AI could understand human emotion. "You care about the human side of technology," he said, his voice as warm as a steaming cup of caramel latte. Isabella looked at him and felt her heart pound not with fear, but with the thrilling realization that she had found someone who shared her burning passion. From that first conversation, Victor guided Isabella into the bright, expanding world of tech. They strolled hand in hand through Stanford's leaf-strewn quad, collecting chestnuts as keepsakes and staying up late coding experimental projects. On starlit nights atop baking soda hills, Victor would raise his telescope to the heavens, pointing out constellations, then whisper, "Do you see Orion? I promise I'll guide your dreams." Isabella would simply smile, but inside, her hope soared hope that she had found a true partner on her journey. And so their story began, a tale of love and ambition, of craving the heights of technology, as well as the heights of the heart. Isabella, the desert girl from Arizona, now stood at the center of a grand dream, hand in hand with the man in whom she placed her complete trust. Every drop of sweat, every lonely night at Stanford, seemed to dissolve, leaving behind just two souls and a world brimming with shared hope. Their wedding had been the hottest topic on every tabloid and gossip magazine. The Grand Hotel ballroom doors had swung wide as Isabella glided in, wearing a white silk princess gown, whose sweeping train cascaded like liquid silk across the walnut dance floor. Victor gripped her arm as they passed beneath an arch of pristine white orchids, each bloom standing tall in regal splendor, pure yet unforgettably proud. A bottle of vintage champagne popped with a resonant pop, its bubbles rising like a chorus of congratulations on a shared lifetime. The guests, Seattle's most influential figures in business and technology, aimed every camera flash at the couple, as if waiting for a downpour of praise to follow. But even the brightest spotlight can fade in an instant. Less than 6 months later, as the young bride began to feel her child growing within her, Victor transformed into someone she no longer recognized. He spoke repeatedly of important business trips, promised late-night meetings with investors, and then returned in stony silence. Isabella's phone inbox overflowed with unread messages. Each time she texted, "I miss you," she received only an ellipsis blinking briefly before vanishing. Worse still was the scent clinging to his coat knot, the familiar blend of herbs and cedarwood he once wore, but an intoxicating bouquet of unfamiliar florals, like the trace perfume of another woman's hair. During restless nights, Isabella tried to soothe her loneliness by telling herself that Victor was simply bearing the weight of the startup empire he had built from scratch. She would cradle her growing bump, feel the gentle flutters of life inside her, and remind herself that the joy of impending motherhood would quell her anxieties. She believed he would return at dawn's first light, with a warm smile and sweet promises, yet reality proved far less kind. The truth crept in through small betrayals, a swipe of bright red lipstick on his collar, hidden beneath his tie until it faded, a bar tab for after-work entertainment buried among his pens, listing the venue's name and a total sum enough to buy a dozen packs of diapers for the baby on the way. The most painful discovery was not the scent or the receipts, but his evasive eyes. Whenever Isabella confronted him, Victor would force himself to meet her gaze over his glasses, hesitate for a moment, then lower his head, rasping, "I'm exhausted. I'll explain tomorrow." But tomorrow, like a phantom rainbow, never appeared. And Isabella realized she had invested too much trust in him, so that even the tiniest crack in their picture-perfect facade could bring everything crashing down. One torrential evening, as they sat side by side on the dark leather sofa, Isabella saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. She said nothing. She simply traced her fingers over her wedding band, the symbol of their vowed happiness. The rain drummed on the window, like the racing pulse of her own heart, splintering into shards. That unfamiliar fragrance lingered on his collar, reminding her of clandestine rendezvous in dimly lit bars, of amber streetlights fractured into sparks, and of laughter that was never meant for her alone. In the dead of night, Isabella bolted upright, fingers trembling as she dialed a close friend. A startled voice asked, "Are you sure he?" But before she could answer, her screen filled with irrefutable evidence: surveillance photos of Victor embracing a blonde woman in a shadowed alley, the embossed names and totals on a lavish dinner bill, and a note reading, "Let's keep it quiet so it all goes smoothly." She swallowed hard, her heart lurching in pain as she realized that every busy schedule was a smokescreen for another affair. By morning, sunlight still glinted through the penthouse windows, yet its warmth could not thaw the frost in Isabella's heart. Standing before the mirror, she studied her weary, drawn face, red-rimmed eyes, worry etched into her skin, and lips pressed tight, scars of a once perfect love, now fractured. She approached the vanity where their wedding portrait tilted slightly, and the white orchid still bloomed in a glass vase. Drawing in a steady breath, she laid her hand on her belly, the sanctuary of an innocent life yet to be born. "We deserve the truth," Isabella whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. And in that moment, she understood that a mother's love would give her the strength to face, to heal, and to move forward. No more empty promises required. Unable to continue living in hollow promises and meaningless illusions, Isabella resolved to reclaim control of her life. The next morning, she stepped out of the penthouse with a determination she had never known before. Under Seattle's faint sunlight, she drove through the bustling streets to Capitol Hill. The artistic neighborhood she knew harbored countless creative souls. In a small studio filled with vibrant paintings and the scent of oil paint, Clara Nguyen, the dearest friend Isabella had ever trusted, waved warmly to greet her. Clara, with her pale purple pixie haircut and eyes brimming with emotion, closed the studio door with one hand. "Isabella, you're here. For what?" Clara's voice was gentle, but her eyes instantly registered the signs of unease on her friend's face. Isabella exhaled, set her purse down, and softly grasped Clara's hand. Victor betrayed me," she whispered. Clara pulled her into an embrace, then stepped back, resting her head on Isabella's shoulder as if to impart strength. "You're not alone. We'll get through this together." Through long, exhaustive conversations over warm cappuccino, Clara helped Isabella review every piece of evidence. Fragmented text messages, blurry photographs, bar receipts bearing Victor's name alongside a strange woman. Each photo, each conversation tightened Isabella's heart, but Clara meticulously took notes, printed every page, and organized them by date. "We need clear order, no gaps," Clara said, her voice resolute. Isabella nodded, feeling a surge of strength spreading through her chest. This was no longer just about love, but a fight to reclaim justice for herself and her unborn child. After working with Clara, Isabella didn't rest but continued her journey to the law office of Sofia Martinez, a renowned attorney specializing in high-asset divorces in downtown Seattle. Gleaming glass walls reflected her figure as she entered the lobby. Before her stood Sofia, a commanding woman in a sharply tailored black suit and neatly pinned hair. Sofia's gaze was stern, but upon seeing the documents Isabella brought, she immediately shifted to a tone of empathy. Through long, exhaustive conversations over warm cappuccino, Clara helped Isabella review every piece of evidence. Fragmented text messages, blurry photographs, bar receipts bearing Victor's name alongside a strange woman. Each photo, each conversation tightened Isabella's heart, but Clara meticulously took notes, printed every page, and organized them by date. "We need clear order, no gaps," Clara said, her voice resolute. Isabella nodded, feeling a surge of strength spreading through her chest. This was no longer just about love, but a fight to reclaim justice for herself and her unborn child. After working with Clara, Isabella didn't rest but continued her journey to the law office of Sofia Martinez, a renowned attorney specializing in high-asset divorces in downtown Seattle. Gleaming glass walls reflected her figure as she entered the lobby. Before her stood Sofia, a commanding woman in a sharply tailored black suit and neatly pinned hair. Sofia's gaze was stern, but upon seeing the documents Isabella brought, she immediately shifted to a tone of empathy. Before leaving the office, Sofia handed Isabella a letter of engagement and advised, "You need to stay calm. Be careful with every word. And always remember, you're fighting not just for yourself, but for your innocent child." Those words fueled Isabella's strength, making her feel justice was drawing near. Back home, Isabella sat in the empty living room, a space that once staged a facade of happiness. She looked at the thick stack of documents on the table, the signed divorce agreement, the detailed legal plan, the journal of emotions and evidence. She gazed at a wedding photo, a moment of illusory bliss, then placed it beside the file. Her heart no longer ached, but brimmed with determination. The moment Isabella threw the envelope containing the divorce agreement into Victor's face, an act that seemed to end all hope, was in truth the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She didn't just abandon illusions of a fractured love, but charted a path to rebirth, an Isabella who was strong, independent, and uncompromising. The portrait Clara once painted, her standing tall amid a storm, eyes resolute, was no longer just a work of art, but a symbol of her inner strength. Standing before the bathroom mirror, Isabella looked straight into her own eyes. She saw a woman who had risen from ruin, who had proactively demanded her rights, and was ready to face any challenge. She picked up her phone, typed a message to Victor. "From now on, my child and I have nothing to do with you. All procedures are complete." Sending it, she relaxed her shoulders, exhaling a sigh of relief. It wasn't an ending, but a declaration of a new beginning. The beginning of Isabella, the unyielding woman, with a heart ablaze with hope and a mind sharp with resolve. The ultrasound machine hummed like a comforting lullaby, echoing the steady rhythm of the tiny heart within the mother's womb. Each beat was a tender melody, touching the deepest emotions of everyone present in the exam room. Soft overhead lights cast a gentle glow upon the ultrasound table, reflecting off Isabella's face. Her cheeks flushed with a hint of worry. She cupped her hands over her belly, striving for calm as she watched the flickering, indistinct shapes of the unborn child appear on the screen. Victor sat beside her. His heart, which should have belonged solely to this moment of joy, was now tangled with regret. He had been permitted to attend today's appointment, a decision that forced them both to confront unhealed wounds. As the doctor guided the ultrasound probe, Victor's eyes remained fixed on the monitor, tears streaming down his cheeks. His lips trembled, yet he could not contain his emotion upon hearing their baby's heartbeat for the first time, a stirring reminder of the sacred responsibility of fatherhood. Isabella felt Victor's warm, damp hand brush hers. She shivered as memories of his silent evasions, the foreign scent of lipstick, the midnight calls that ended abruptly, washed over her like an undercurrent. In that instant, she gently withdrew her hand, curling inward on the exam chair, her gaze clouded with sorrow. She refused to harm the child. Yet deep down, she still needed to protect her own heart. The doctor's calm voice carried across the room. "Your baby is developing well, with a heartbeat around 150 beats per minute. Everything looks healthy." His tone was professional, yet his eyes shone with genuine joy for Isabella. Victor bowed his head, then looked up at her, silently seeking permission to hold on to whatever hope remained between them. Isabella turned away, then nodded softly, her voice quavering. "You may stay, just to listen to our baby's heartbeat." Victor dropped his head again in gratitude, his eyes lighting up with a mix of happiness and remorse. He settled back next to her, leaning in, ears attuned to every pulse. Each clear, bell-like thump prompted him to close his eyes, pushing aside past regrets, focusing only on the precious life before him. Isabella watched him, wondering whether their child could heal their unspoken wounds, or if this moment was merely proof that pain still ran too deep for healing. When the exam concluded, the doctor turned off the machine, and the room's light seemed to grow more real. Victor handed back the probe to the nurse, then looked at Isabella as if to speak, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to promise change. But Isabella remained silent, meeting his eyes in quiet stillness. The space between them felt wider than the room itself, filled only by the ticking clock and the faint, steadfast thump of their baby's heart beneath her thin blouse. As night fell, Isabella placed her hand over her belly, gently circling a warm, protective embrace. Their baby's heartbeat still resonated within her, a powerful affirmation of new life. Her heart, though once locked away, now stood wide open, ready to embrace the sweet rhythm of her child, the only soul she would ever give her boundless love and hope. The hurts of yesterday would no longer impede her path into motherhood, for the newfound strength she'd discovered was the greatest gift she could offer both herself and her child. The law office was stifling under harsh white lights, the only sounds the hum of the air conditioner and the steady rustle of papers as clerks flipped through files. Before Isabella and Sophia stood Victor's trio of attorneys, their black suits crisply pressed, expressions icy, eyes assessing every thought crossing Isabella's mind. On one side lay Victor's financial power and prestige. On the other, Isabella's unwavering resolve, the woman with no retreat. The first lawyer, tall and composed, spoke slowly. "Miss Isabella, we understand the pain you've endured, but Mr. Victor Salazar wishes to extend his sincerest apologies. He promises to change and to fulfill his responsibilities as a father." Victor bowed his head, his eyes rimmed red. His voice cracked as he added, "Isabella, I was wrong. I will never allow you or our child to suffer again." Time seemed to pause. All eyes turned to Isabella, waiting for her response. She lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and her voice rang out like steel. "I don't need promises. I need justice." Those 4 words floated lightly, yet cut sharply. Victor froze, astonishment flickering in his gaze. Sophia offered a slight, knowing smile and emphasized, We are not here for promises or apologies. We are here to protect a mother's rights and a child's rights. Fatherhood cannot be fulfilled through empty words alone. She turned to the opposing counsel. Regarding child support, we demand a level proportionate to Mr. Salazar's actual income, including startup dividends and investment returns. Victor's lawyer rifled through documents objecting, Mr. Salazar will contribute appropriately, but this amount exceeds customary standards. Sophia did not wait for further debate. Customs often shield the powerful. We pursue justice, guided by the child's best interest. The discussion shifted to custody. Another attorney spoke gravely. Mr. Salazar requests shared custody, rights at minimum, continued residence in the penthouse to care for the child. Isabella's brows narrowed, her eyes icy. He may visit the penthouse whenever our child needs a father's presence. But primary residence belongs to me until our child turns 8. That is where our child will grow, enveloped in the warmth of family. They pressed on through negotiations, clause by clause. Attorneys on both sides sparred, but Isabella's eyes never left Sophia's steadfast friend at her side. She recalled the lonely nights of pain and vowed never to return there. At last, with figures recorded and terms approved with the gavel's strike, Victor rose, forcing a wry smile. Isabella, thank you for giving me the chance to be a father. I will honor every term to prove my apology is more than words. Isabella inclined her head slightly, her gaze still resolute. Not to prove it to me, but to prove it to our child. That is what matters most. As she left the conference room, Isabella drew in a deep breath. Each step she took was a stake planted firmly in the ground. Justice had triumphed over empty promises. Fairness had defeated deceit. Behind her, Sophia smiled, knowing that Isabella had conquered a difficult battle and was embarking on a new journey. The journey of a strong, courageous, dignified mother. The day of the final hearing had arrived, and the courtroom doors swung open as if beckoning those whose fates awaited a definitive verdict. Isabella stepped lightly into the grand hall, her navy maternity dress gently contouring around her form, bowed ever so slightly by the life she carried within. Every detail of her outfit had been chosen with care. The bateau neckline offered just enough modesty, the elbow-length sleeves draped elegantly, and the skirt flared softly at the calf, as though to affirm her steadfast self-belief. Overhead lights filtered down, glinting off the deep fabric and illuminating the unwavering determination in her eye-size that had weathered countless storms, now fixed firmly on the future. Her footsteps tapped quietly on the marble floor, marking a steady cadence in the solemn space. At the bench sat the judge, his silvery beard lending him an air of solemn authority. Flanking him were the legal teams. On Victor's side, attorneys in ash-gray suits and polished leather gloves. On Isabella's, Sofia Martinez herself, a poised figure, her gaze sharp as a blade. The assembled legal professionals turned their attention to her, searching for signs of lingering hope or fear in the woman before them. As the proceedings began, the judge's gavel rang out with a crisp report, silencing every whisper. He pronounced, "The marriage between Mr. Victor Gregory and Miss Isabella Nguyen is hereby dissolved, effective immediately." His voice was warm yet carried the full weight of justice in each word. Isabella stood tall, her hands gently cradling her abdomen. She inhaled deeply, her chest rising like a vessel ready to welcome a new breath of life. Next came the division of assets. The penthouse atop the riverside building, fully furnished, would remain in Miss Nguyen's possession until her child reached the age of 10. Beyond that point, she could choose to continue renting at a preferential market rate or to sell under the conditions outlined in the agreement. Victor's startup shares would remain his, but he would assume full responsibility for the mortgage and provide child support. That support would be calculated based on his actual income, including salary, dividends, and investment return sand paid monthly until their child reached 18 or completed a university degree. Each clause read by the judge felt like a sturdy brick laid in the wall of fairness. Observers could hear Isabella's soft sigh, not one of fear, but of release from burdens long carried. When he closed his judgment, the gavel fell again, sounding like the final note in a grand symphony. In that moment, Isabella felt a breeze of freedom wash over her, not the draft from the hallway, but the wind of a just decision. Her rights newly restored. Victor attempted to interject, his eyes shimmering with remorse and hope. "Isabella, please give me one more chance." Yet his plea faltered against the fortress of law. Isabella only offered a gentle smile, speaking no word. That smile carried a tender warmth reserved for her child, and a serenity reclaimed after countless nights of anguish. She tilted her head slightly, glancing toward Sophia in silent gratitude for standing by her in the fight for justice and for their shared future. Stepping out of the courtroom, Isabella inhaled deeply. Each footfall on the slick, cool marble was a stake driven into the ground. Justice had prevailed over empty promises. Truth had triumphed over deceit. Behind her, Sophia smiled, knowing that Isabella had conquered a hard-fought battle and now embarked on a new journey, the journey of a strong, determined, and dignified mother. Isabella closed her eyes and drew a deep breath as she locked the penthouse door one last time. Seattle receded behind her, carrying with it both sweet and bitter memories. Her heart skipped a gentle beat, though the sorrow of departure still lingered. A new space had opened within her to welcome fresh beginnings. She set off for Portland, Oregon, with a light suitcase in hand and dreams of a more peaceful start. Her modest apartment nestled beside the Willamette River, where languid waves lapped against the stone quay, offering a soothing whisper from nature. The 4-story brick building, its red paint now faded, glowed warmly through its frosted windows each late afternoon. Isabella walked down the hallway, the soft echo of her footsteps on the worn wooden floor, affirming that she stood in a wholly different world, far from the glitzy glass towers, yet filled with the quiet warmth of home. No sooner had she dragged a small round table into the living room than she called Clara New, her closest friend, still in Seattle, to help decorate the nursery. Clara arrived carrying a large canvas tote filled with cloud-patterned wallpaper rolls, pastel blue curtains, and an array of small stuffed animals. A plush teddy bear, a mischievous long-eared bunny, even an adorable gray penguin. The roughly 12-square-meter room was bathed in light from a broad window overlooking the river, where willow branches swooped gently in the breeze. Clara unrolled each wallpaper panel onto the walls, while Isabella dipped a roller into peach-hued paint and brushed it onto a cornering, unassuming shade as delicate as a newborn's first smile. Instantly, the room brightened, each coat of paint dissolving any chill. Next, they hung small pastel prints, rabbits dancing in the moonlight, sparrows perched on blossoms, and sometimes a lone star shimmering against the night sky. Those soft, dreamlike images transformed the space into a fairy tale garden where the baby's first laugh would one day bloom. In another corner, Clara arranged a 3-tiered white wooden shelf with newborn essentials, a monogrammed sweet baby quilt, a tiny onesie folded just so, cream-colored knit booties, and a handful of vivid picture books. On the windowsill, they lined up keepsake boxes' first fingernails, the very first outfit, a sweet little card. Each item was placed with care, honoring the sacred trust of a mother for her unborn child. When the final touches were made, soft amber lights flickered on, illuminating every corner. Isabella stepped forward, her hand grazing the pastel walls, her eyes shining with pride. She turned to Clara, her smile both shy and grateful. "Thank you, Clara. Because of you, this room is no longer just four wall sits a home." Clara grinned and placed her hand on Isabella's shoulder. "I'm honored to share this moment. It's perfect. You're going to love it here." In that peaceful moment, Isabella rested her hand on her belly, feeling a gentle kick, a tender greeting from her child. A bittersweet smile touched her lips, her eyes glistening. "My love, I did all this so you'll have a warm place to grow." Each flutter echoed her own heartbeat, reminding her that a true home needs no opulence, only boundless love and hope. As evening settled, slanting sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting shadows of the small cradle at the room's center. Isabella sat beside it, gently arranging the stuffed animals around the pillow as if introducing newborn friends. She recalled the nights spent apartment hopping in Seattle, those stormy days in her heart while seeking justice. Yet now, each breeze off the Willamette seemed to wash away old sorrows, making room for peace. In that quiet, warm space, the soft murmur of river waves reached her ears through the window. Bending slightly, she whispered, "You know, I chose Portland to begin again, to write a new story together. This will be the place you feel safe, learn your first steps, and discover that love is more than a promise, it's action, every single day." She placed her hand over her heart, affirming that this was no mere sentiment. Night fell, and the river's streetlights twinkled like tiny stars within the room. Isabella switched off the overhead light, leaving only the gentle glow of a bedside lamp. She settled into the rocking chair beside the crib, eased the backrest into position, closed her eyes, and let herself relax. Yet even in rest, her gaze lingered on the silent nursery, every precious item awaiting the day it would welcome new life. To Isabella, this little apartment in Portland was far more than a dwelling. It was the place where she and her child would warm one another on northwest rainy days, the starting point of a new life unshadowed by lies, guided instead by the light of a mother's love. And each time her baby kicked, she would remember. She had built a true homeone overflowing with affection, and a future they would embrace together. Isabella closed one painful chapter to open a new one in her life. Every morning, she awoke in her modest apartment, her heart warm, and stirred her body with slow, soothing movements in her prenatal yoga class. In a loose t-shirt that gently hugged her bump and bare feet on a plush mat, she inhaled deeply, feeling positive energy flow down her back and into her legs. When the bell signaled the end of class, she did not rush out of her warrior pose. Instead, she paused, eyes closed, and smiled, cherishing the moment to rest and savor every flutter from her child. After practice, Isabella spent her afternoons freelancing as a technology strategy consultant. Seated at her desk by a window overlooking a quiet Portland street, she connected via video with eager startups. Her voice was calm yet authoritative. Each recommendation on implementing artificial intelligence or bolstering cybersecurity earned admiring remarks. This work did more than pay the bills, it restored her confidence in her own abilities. She was independent, creative, and self-reliant. A busy mind is often the best remedy for a wounded heart. But Isabella knew some scars needed gentle care. She began seeing a psychotherapist, a woman with soft curls and an empathetic smile. Seated in a comfortable armchair, Isabella recounted her past trust shattered, lonely nights clutching her belly, tears that would not cease. Each story was a painful shard, but beneath the therapist's warm light and kind encouragement, Isabella learned to face her pain and release it. She learned to affirm her own worth. She deserved love, respect, and happiness. Her relationship with Victor also found a new balance. Though their romance had ended, Victor upheld his role as their child's father, respecting every boundary Isabella set. He attended only the essential prenatal appointments, silently listening to their baby's heartbeat and maintaining a respectful distance. His simple shirt no longer carried traces of deceitful fragrance. Instead, it reminded him of his responsibility and the sacred bond with their child. One sunset afternoon, the city of Portland was draped in golden light like a silk cloak. Isabella stood by the Willamette River, hand on her belly, gazing at the water reflecting rows of willow trees. The early autumn breeze stirred her hair across her face, and the dying sun painted warm pink-gold streaks on her skin. She closed her eyes and placed her palm over her child's rhythmic, pulsing, exultant song of life. She whispered, "My love, we will be the brightest stars." This was not a promise to Victor, but a vow to herself and her baby. Come what may, they would shine together, steadfast beneath life's vast sky. As time passed, Isabella joined a support group for single mothers, where she found empathy and shared strength. One weekend meeting, soft amber lights illuminated a spread of pastries and a circle of chairs. Mothers who had known heartbreak sat together, listening and offering encouragement. When her turn came, Isabella stood, heart pounding with nerves, but eyes ablaze with conviction. She spoke of her journey from a broken heart, the sweat in yoga class, the long hours of work, the therapy sessions that unearthed painful memories only to transform them into power. She taught them that self-love is the deepest medicine, a warm flame that fuels a mother's devotion. When she sat down, the room fell silent, yet brimmed with emotion. A young mother, tears glistening in her eyes, grasped Isabella's hand. "Thank you. I see now that I can be strong too." That simple, heartfelt gratitude beat like a rallying drum, bolstering Isabella's spirit. She smiled, her heart overflowing with joy, not just because she had healed herself, but because she could light the way for others to find hope. As she left that cozy room, Isabella was more than a resilient single mother. She was a beacon guiding wounded hearts. Each step she took down the hallway affirmed a life rebuilt on courage and love. And in her heart, the anthem of the brightest stars would forever echo, leading her and her child across the wide, open sky that lay before them. Isabella's journey teaches us that even when the darkness of betrayal threatens to overwhelm us, the light within can still shine brilliantly. From her pain, she discovered the strength to love herself and her child, spreading hope to other women. The lesson is clear. You don't need anyone else to define your happiness. You are the torch that lights your own path. Let this story heal your heart and remind you that you are strong enough to weather any storm. To our viewers in the US, what does Isabella's story evoke in you? Leave a comment and share your own story. You might inspire someone today. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss these meaningful tales. And hit the notification bell to join us in spreading the light. Thank you for journeying with us from Seattle to Portland, and we'll see you in the next video.